Let's get corrupted. What's up, YouTube? It's your boy Joe with Meteoric Serpents coming back at you for another episode of the Colubrid Corruption Podcast. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in for another episode. We're back again. You know, we love to do this every week. Hope you're all having an amazing weekend, a great Sunday. Back to work tomorrow, but it is what it is. You guys get to hang out with me and Clint for a little bit. And, speaking of Clint, tonight's guest is Clint Bartley of Metazotics. So super excited to have him on. He's someone I've looked up to in the Colubrid world for a number of years. I started seeing him on Facebook a number of years ago. And just some amazing snakes, an amazing collection. And what he's built today is just fantastic. And it kind of by gloom and doom odds of what people have been saying about the reptile market over the last year and a half or so. So I think there's going to be a fantastic conversation tonight, guys. As usual, guys, all my social media are right here. Go follow me on Instagram. You can stay tuned to all the Colubrid Corruption Podcast episode announcements, some clips from the episodes and whatnot. And you get to see my collection as well. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe on today's video. Guys, I see the analytics every week, and I see that 35% of you are not subscribed. What's going on? I don't know. Hit that subscribe button. If you enjoy watching this, hey, if you watch in silence and I don't hear from you, that's awesome. I appreciate it. But hit that subscribe button at least. So, you get to, be notified every single time we go live, every time I post a video, all that stuff. I do also have Meteoric Serpents t-shirts available. If you are interested in one of those, just let me know. I'll get one sent out your way. Guys, also, there are animals available on Morph Market. I do have a few left. I sold a few, but that's cool. But if you're interested in anything, just let me know. Guys, also, everyone here should be supporting USARK. USARK is the organization that fights for our rights as reptile keepers. They fight against all the bad legislation that goes on, whether it's statewide or on a national level, to make sure that we can keep the pets and the animals that, we love keeping. It's people's businesses. So make sure you support USARK and USARK Florida, because Florida is a huge hub for these reptiles. So yeah, go do that. Also, I endorse this every week. If you're looking to diversify your colubrid diet, make sure you go check out Blake's Exotic Feeders on Instagram. Some great frozen quail. I'm able to go to his house. He's local to me, but he will ship across the country. If you hit him up, let him know that Joe from Meteoric Serpent sent you, and he'll hook you up. Last but not least, first link in the description has the link to the Meteoric Serpents Patreon. Guys, I want to build an awesome community of fellow colubrid lovers. Also with that, it helps you support me making this bigger and better, allowing me to take this podcast on some bigger endeavors. So I really appreciate that. But yeah, and then let's see who is in the live chat tonight, guys, and we'll get Clint out here. Adam from Ivory Colubrid Co. What is up, man? Clint is double dipping in the chat. Max, what is up? Thanks for being here. Wiz, my dog, thanks for being here. Neurophi Exotics, Krista, thanks for coming out here tonight. Eric B, yes, make sure you hit that like, hit that subscribe, and hit the notification bell for sure. Kira, thanks for being here. Or it's Porsche. Okay. Genetics Nerd, what's up? Thanks for being here. Let's see who else. Bosa Reptiles, thanks for coming out. Grumpy Little Moose. A lot of first-time people here. I appreciate you all. Thank you so much. J Hill Jr., thank you for coming out. And last but not least, we got Studio Cold Blood. Thanks for coming out tonight. Guys, without further ado, let's bring out our guest for tonight. Everyone, please welcome Clint Bartley of Metazotics. What's up, man? How are you?
Hey. Hello, everyone. Hello, Joe. Good to be here, man.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate you coming on.
I was looking forward to it.
Yeah, 100%. So, we're bringing the Colubrid podcast together again. Had Zach on a few weeks ago, or a little bit about a month ago. That was really fun, and really excited to have you on as well, because there's different sides to you. You guys both bring different elements to the show of CCR. which you guys should all check out. If you're watching my show and you're interested in colubrids, you should be watching Colubrid Colubroid Radio, hosted by Clint and Dr. Zach Loafman. So, yeah. But yeah, Clint, for anyone who doesn't know you, because I have some viewers that I don't think know who you really are, can you kind of give your background about reptiles and where that has led to where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that starts many, many moons ago. I caught my first snake when I was 6 years old. I fell in love with reptiles as a whole. That developed to, I think it was, I was 11 years old when I produced my first clutch. And this is now my 31st year producing reptiles.
Awesome.
And, you know, so it started with me just falling in love with what I would find out, you know, in the woods and in the creeks, that kind of thing. And grew over time I really always have leaned towards the colubrids. You know, I keep pythons, I keep boas and other things, but, you know, the colubrids have definitely taken my heart. For years, I would breed, I would sell things online, sell things at shows, stuff like that. And then finally, after COVID, I'd spent 20 years in multi-unit retail management. And so a lot of experience in that realm. And I loved what I did, had a fantastic time, but I was on the road 4-5 days a week. I've got 3 little ones at home and decided, you know what, I want to make this dream that I've had since I was 6 years old a reality. And I want my head in my own, you know, on my own pillow every night. So we pulled the trigger, and August will be 2 years that Metazotics has been officially open to the public.
Awesome. And before it was Metazotics, it was Clint Bartley Reptiles?
It was just Bartley Reptiles.
Oh, okay. Bartley Reptiles. Right.
Yeah, I kind of figured whenever we opened the building, I'm not the kind of guy that needs my name on the door, you know?
Yeah,
so I wanted to make it something that was different. So
yeah, I definitely think it's definitely a cool standout dish name, and like the one word thing, I always think that's cool when you're able to just get the one word, you know, to kind of describe who you are. So that's very cool. And just for everyone, like my kind of background of knowing who Clint was, I was just telling him before we started, because we haven't really talked a whole lot in the past. I remember I was seeing, and I've always talked about this, I was seeing Matt Most post back in like 2016, 2017 on Facebook, all these Asian colubrids and other things. And then I remember distinctly there were some posts talking about his collaboration on black rat snakes with Clint. So that's how I got put on to Clint. So I've looked up to the both of them on like a social media level for just years. And I hate to say, there was definitely a couple years ago where I 100% tire kicked you on a couple snakes, and I apologize for that.
Well, I can promise you it happened so often that I wouldn't have known or would have no recollection of it. So
yeah, it was back a couple of years ago. I was up at college, and I was like, what snakes do I want to keep? And I went through you. I talked to a couple king snake guys, and then I settled on another pair of Texas rats. So gotcha. Guess I didn't stray too far. But
no problem. Sooner or later, I'll have you make it up to me. We'll send you something. So
it's all good. Yeah, man. So yeah, like you were saying, you've kept such a diverse group of colubrids over the years, and just in general now with the shop, I mean, your collection is immense.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
with all the different species you keep, you know, just in terms of colubrids, and you have ball pythons, and you have a ton of lizards now. Like I've seen a huge incorporation of lizards and amphibians and a whole bunch of other stuff. So that's been really cool to see. And you've been enjoying that. Like, how has it been, like, taking on all these new species and stuff? Now I know you have like your caretakers, your employees.
Yeah. It's, you know, it has really, at times it's exhausting. You know, I'm not going to pretend otherwise. Opening any kind of business is, you know, you're really going to be moving. But I will say it has like completely rejuvenated me in a lot of ways too, because there are things that I don't want to say I took for granted by any means, but didn't interest me as much. For example, bearded dragons. You know,
I knew you were going to say that. I've heard you talk about them.
Right. But now, I mean, I love these little things, that
Yeah,
they're such cool little personalities, and they're like a wonderful kind of starter reptile as long as you get the individual set up right on the
of
care
course.
needs.
Yep.
But I mean, they're great. But then I never thought that, and I think I've mentioned this on CCR before, but isopods, roly polies. I would have never cared about these little things, but I
Yeah.
love watching them in a bioactive and doing that thing. So many
Nice.
different segments of the hobby and different taxa and all that. Just it really makes you appreciate it even more, and it doesn't shake off what your favorites are. It doesn't
Right.
change that, but you just start seeing why. I see why people were into these,
Yeah.
and that kind of thing. Watching a Pac-Man frog eat, and like get a little frustrated and use its hands and all this to push.
Right.
That's awesome. It's hilarious. I love
Yeah.
that stuff. So it's definitely just kind of broadened me and made me appreciate the hobby as a whole even more.
Yeah. And we're definitely going to talk about, the whole shop and everything a little bit later, but just, to kind of go off what you said, I don't think, just like the solo keeper in their own personal collection can appreciate taking on that many species just because they don't have the time or ability to take care of all those things. But now you have this, this shop where you have help, you have all these employees, and you have the space to really do right by all these different animals and learn a whole lot and be in the mix.
Well, and I can tell you that it's even with all the, associates that we have here, and they all are fantastic. They do a great job at what they do. But they'll tell you, I mean, there's times they feel that they are running ragged, because it's
Right.
my mentality is always, we've got to continue moving forward and doing it the right way. So it's not like we can just go fast. We have to go fast and right. Everything's got to be done right. But, in order for us to continue growing as a company, we've got to continue to grow, in all aspects.
Yeah.
But it's the thing that I will say that right now, I mean, it is difficult with having so many other individuals taking care of the animals. It has kind of held me back from taking on a new species that I would consider difficult, and that's because I want to have more of my own hands on them.
Yeah.
And at the moment, I don't get to do as much of that as,
Gotcha.
There's like one solid day a week where I go through all the breeders myself, but it's just that one. And if I'm going to take on something that I need to learn the behaviors, I've got to have a lot more interaction with it than one day a week where it's my eyes, checking over everything. So, but yeah, I will tell you, I mean, to do this on the scale that we're doing it now, there's no way. I mean, I think we have a staff of 8, and they still are like, can we hire more people? Not yet. No. So.
Yeah, and even 8. I mean, obviously, I've never been to the store in person, but like eight people working like a group of animals, and of course, I don't know their schedules, but like that's no joke. Like that's a lot of people. And if you're saying like, or if they're saying like they need more, then I can only imagine what kind of collection it really is.
Yeah, there are 2 individuals who primarily take care of all of the breeders. And that's the bulk, we got 3,000 square feet devoted just to that.
Wow. Okay.
And then there's everybody else. We're taking care of customers. We're taking care of shipments, things like that. And taking care of all the animals that are on the floor and any of them that are kind of like in quarantine, about to be moved to the floor, that type of thing. So it's a lot. I mean, we do a lot, we expect a lot from each other because it's who we want to be. So
100%. Awesome. Yeah. So now diving into some of the Colubrid collection, of course, that's the topic of the show. I mentioned it to you beforehand, but like you have so many species, and so much stuff has been talked about on this show that I actually want to highlight a few that really haven't gotten a ton of light on here, but ones you work with rather prevalently. So let's dive into the Porphyracea. That's some of my favorites. I freaking love Porphyracea, and I haven't had anyone on that really has such a collection like yours. And I don't even have that crazy of a collection of them, but like they've they've been some of my favorite snakes for a really long time. So talk about how, that group started and how you started getting into them and where you're at with them.
So Porphyracia it really opened a lot of doors. I stumbled across them at a Tinley, and it was Pro Exotics who had them, which at the time, Pro Exotics was really the only people, that had them, because they're who brought, the Coxeye and Lats and a lot of that in to begin with. And I picked up, I think it was a pair, maybe a trio back then of Coxeye. And that was the first Asian rat snake that I had. And I will say, for anyone listening who has thought about getting into Asian rat snakes, it is the perfect starter Asian rat snake.
1000%.
Yeah,
I fully agree. And it was mine. It was mine. So I fully endorse that.
And they're very easy to take care of. I mean, they're only going to get 36 inches roughly. Small bodied. You can handle them without a problem. They're flighty at times, and they can be nippy, but they're small enough it's not going to do anything. They are just as pretty, and I'm right now, like the Coxeye, for example, they're just as pretty from the moment they hatch until the moment they pass.
Yeah,
they look the same.
And guys, I just want to make clear before Clint goes on, only because people have brought it to my attention. Porphyracia, the Coxeye, we're talking about the bamboo rat snakes. Just wanted to clear that up for anyone who didn't know.
Yep. So we'll say the Thai bamboo rat snake is the Coxeye. That's the one that's got your racing stripes on it. Then you've got Laticinctus. That's going to be your banded bamboo rat snake. That's the one that hatches out like a brilliant yellow and orange. And a lot of people will see that and think it's going to stay that way, and it doesn't. However, it turns into one of the most red snakes I've ever seen, as adults.
Yeah, I've been seeing more adults. I've been seeing more adults, and I'm just like, oh, am I missing out on Laticinctus?
They are like up there as far as some of my favorites. I will say a gravid Laticinctus female is really, whenever they hit that glow, it's probably just the most brilliant red I've seen, in person on a snake for sure.
Yeah.
Then you've got the Pulcher, which are going to be the Yunnan bamboo rat snakes. They go through a change where they'll start off kind of like a strong banded black that turns into more of like a pinstripe banding kind of thing. And then you've got Volante, the Chinese bamboo rat snake. I say that because I've had all four. I've produced all four, but for some reason, I think I'm where Volante come to die because I just do poorly with them. I've got 5 of them right now that I recently got in from a friend, and I'm like, I just stare at them thinking, do I sell you before I kill you? Or do I try now? Is this going to be the batch that I'm going to be successful with? Because I keep them, just like I do the other bamboos, which we should probably hit on that. Typically it's, I keep a 28 quart to, a little bigger. You can use anything in that range. They do well in a rack system. They do well in caging. That's one of the species that they're going to be fine in either. I'm doing something different this year. Previously, I've kept them on cypress mulch because they do need some humidity. But I'm finding that with cypress at times, especially with them, because their bowel movements are smaller, so they're not as noticeable. It's real easy when spot cleaning to miss it in that cypress or to not get all of it. And being that you're keeping them humid, I just feel that I'm like, you know what, we're begging for more bacteria to be, just produced in these environments. So this year we have swapped our bamboos over to aspen, but ensured that we're providing them a humid hide with cocoa fiber. And so far, so good. So far, everything's doing okay. We're keeping an eye on them to see, because I feel that aspen's going to dry that feces up faster, and it makes it much more noticeable on that light background, that kind of thing. If I see that there's any issues, we'll swap back. But so far, I don't think it's going to be a problem, really. And I keep all mine room temp. That room temp gets as low as 72, as high as 76. And now my babies, I can't say everybody does this, but I do give my babies some gradient heat. I give them a warm side of no more than 80.
Okay.
And I feel my mentality behind this is they're hatching during the warmest time of the year in their climate. It's not as hot as what we are over here.
Right.
But with that in mind, I want to give the babies a little bit more of an option to ensure that they're digesting as strong as possible for those first, 5-10 meals that they're getting in them. But once they hit the holdback rack and hit the breeding room, there's no heat anymore. With them. But they're great. I mean, they really are. They're hardy. They produce very well. They're easy to breed. It's something where, if you've thought about Asians, start there, and they're going to boost your confidence. You're going to love them, and you don't have to chase morphs. You don't have to try to, produce the next big thing. They're gorgeous just like they are. Everyone loves them just like they are. And I mean, they're a showstopper. People will stop at your table just to look at these.
So I vended a show in Orlando, an Orlando Repticon, and I happened to bring my adult female because I was like, let's just see how much attention she can bring today. Wasn't for sale, of course, but I was like, and the amount of people that stopped and said, oh my God, that snake looks fake. Oh my God, that's the best thing I've seen here today was unbelievable. So that only tells me that people want to see more of these things. They just never knew they existed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which has been amazing to see. And even in other circles, I share them with my friends in the ball python community, and they're just like, oh my God, what is that thing? And I'm just like, yeah, that's what it is. They come in the wild like that. I'm like, yeah.
What I often say, because I say it about those, I say it about mandarins and some others. I go, literally, if you flipped a rock, this is what it would look like right here. Yep. It would look just like this. How crazy is that?
Yeah.
So,
and what about for you with feeding response on them? Like my cockeye are just savages.
Oh yeah,
absolute. Yeah.
With babies, they can be a little bit more timid. Like, I mean, I just do a lot of drop feed, close.
Yeah.
A lot of times, babies are going to want live more than frozen. That's typical too. I think it's just that hunting instinct in them. But yeah, you're right. Once they kind of hit about that year mark. I mean, they're ravenous. I mean,
good to know.
Very, very strong feeding response for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Yeah. I mean, the two that I currently have, I mean, are just freakish when I open that tub with food, whether it's a quail or pinky respectively, but they just go nuts.
Yeah. I actually had I've got a local customer and friend that is considering, well, he is getting into cockeye now, and this would be I think this is his first colubrid. And
nice.
So I took him into the back room, and he wanted to check out some of the adults to see what they were like. And I kind of told him, I said, the thing about picking up a bamboo rat snake adult is they need to realize you're not feeding them, because if you just touch it, they turn around with the mouth open before they even realize what's happening. I said, just kind of scoop under and you're good, because then they realize it's not feeding time.
I do match trick. I go in to my adult with a hook, like no lie, and that's not me being like whatever. I'm just letting them know, because when I go in with the hook and I just scoop them up, like they're cool. As soon as my hand touches them, she's not cool.
Try going under. Go under.
Under. Okay. All right.
Either that or, and this is a trick I use with a lot of snakes, but them in particular. Because typically my hand's I don't have big hands, even though I'm a big guy, but my hand's going to be big enough to pretty much cover their body if they're coiled.
Okay.
And so when I reach in, I cover their entire body and head with my hand. And if you do that, then you can just
I do that with babies
like that. Do the same thing with the adults.
I'm a small dude. I have small hands, so.
It's that particular trick. I mean, it works on so much for me to just cover them up completely and then pick up. But if I just try to grab a coil, I'm gonna get thumps. But as crazy as this sounds, I swear it. Even we've got I think it's nearly 700 breeders here, including holdbacks and all that. And I maybe get bit every 3 years, not counting babies.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, just learned how to do it. Now, there's some that really, really want to, and I handle those differently, than the ones that don't.
Right.
But yeah, it's just reading the behavior and how to approach them really helps out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. You've heard me talk about them, but everyone thinks Texas rats are the devil. But I swear by my animals, I do not get bit.
I will. You know what? And I'll tell you, babies. Yes, babies have the attitude. We know that.
Yeah, fresh out of the egg, sure.
Yeah.
But like even once
I
they're
agree.
My hatchlings from last year, nothing, no reaction. I pick them up, scoop them up.
Once they hit
all
about
good.
6 months, they're nothing. And that's especially, I mean, anything like, captives, because all mine, I mean, we're looking at 6 foot plus adults, my Lucy Texas rats. And
Yeah.
I'm with you. They don't even act like they're going to strike, at that point, they're no different than a black rat. I just think that, they got a little more attitude as a hatchling. That's about it. But, and it really, that's more show than anything. It's more open mouth display than it is actual strike,
Yep.
So,
yeah,
I agree with you there.
Yeah. And since you talked about them there, let's kind of transition to those. So like the black rat snakes have kind of been one of your big staples over the years. From what I can tell, you worked a lot on the morphs of those. And am I wrong to say did you like kind of discover any morphs on those guys, or did you kind of just work them as they came along?
So I don't want to say we discovered any. We kind of rediscovered is what happened.
Okay.
So I guess first I'll back up on like where black rats came into the picture for me.
Okay.
So the very first snake I ever caught at 6 years old was an Eastern black king snake. And those are always going to be, in my mind, the pinnacle of local native snakes in my area. When I find those, and people who listen to CCR know, I've got 10 laid out behind the building. I've got a population of EBKs right back there that every now and then I'll flip and find one. And I love that,
Right.
But I only had that snake for less than 24 hours because I was 6 years old. It bit me. I screamed, I threw it, and then I cried because I lost it. But the next snake I caught was a baby black rat snake. And I kept that thing for quite some time. We're talking a few years. And that just kind of black, and without even opening that can of worms, we don't want to.
Right.
Now they're not black rat snakes in my area anymore. They're gray rat snakes. But regardless,
yours are considered grays by you?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. And if I had to really put my opinion on it, which nobody wants, I'm sure, we're more of an intergrade. I mean, we've got what I would call some of the dirtiest black rats that you'll find because they definitely have gray rat influence, but they do not look like what you would consider a gray rat, by typical standards. So, but that they are definitely the most common thing found in my area. And so much so that, any of us that do snakes, we all have the, what is this? What is this? What is this? Message that we get from everybody who knows that we like snakes, right? Those pictures. Yep. My phone auto populates black rat snake because I respond that so often.
Nice.
But so, I grew up with, catching so many of those, and they definitely have a place, near and dear to me for many reasons. They're a heavy bodied snake compared to like a corn snake.
Yes.
I see them as probably the most perfect North American colubrid. And that's because, truthfully, if we were to lump black rats, gray rats, and whether we want to call them Eastern, Western, Midlands, whatever, if we were to kind of lump that together, think about how huge their range is and how many different habitats that covers and different climates, that really covers. Yeah. And for them to be able to cover that vast of an area, it shows how hardy and highly adaptable they are. And so that's why I think they're just very, very strong. And so then when you start combining, morphs into that picture, to me, they are a much better starter colubrid than even a corn snake. They're going to get a little bigger, but nothing crazy, but they're just hardier. They're not as flimsy as a hatchling. They can handle being handled, more. They can handle mistakes better because, with temperature and humidity and things like that. So So anyways, I felt several years ago that the morphs were starting to pick up. They were starting to pick up in Europe because people had gotten away from them over here. And it was like with a lot of colubrids that the interest had wavered and came down when ball pythons blew up. Right. So I saw some hypolavenders that were available overseas. And at the time, I had no idea how to get anything over here from overseas. But Matt and I were friends. And actually, going back to Coxeye real quick, that's what opened the door to Matt and I meeting. Is I bought a female from him. He's in Indianapolis. I'm in Evansville. We met up halfway, which it's like a 3-hour drive between the two of us.
Gotcha.
We met up halfway, talked, really hit it off. And I mean, a great friendship developed from there. And so I knew Matt had the ability to get things, imported in, and he had the connections. So I showed him these and I'm like, look, man, it's a purple snake. I'm like, trust me, now, and given at the time, Matt, he knew, we knew each other well enough to know about care of the animals and all that. But I don't know if Matt really knew the depth that I had when it came to predicting a market and kind of seeing, I know that this is going to be popular. I can see it, it's going to happen over here. And so we went in together and got some hypo lavenders, hypo het lavenders, things like that sent over. And it's crazy because, this is a North American snake, but you couldn't find these morphs in North America. Right. So we got them over and, we're working with them. We've produced several hypo lavenders at this point, a calico hypo lavender. Just really cool things. And we picked up some animals that were supposed to be male brindles, because you are hard pressed to find a brindled black rat snake now. When it's like several of us had them back in the 90s, but good luck finding them anymore. Right. And so we got a hold of those from one source, and from a different source, we got some rusty het hypo het sunrise, and that's what they were sold to me as. Now, at the time, that was described as, well, sunrise is just going to be albino. So I'm like, oh, okay. So they're rusty, het hypo, het albino. And whenever you hit all those, it's called sunrise. That's not the case. And I didn't know that until producing them. And then I'm like, what the hell is this? Right. And then we started doing some things with those quote unquote male brindles that turned out to not be. The way we found out that male brindle is not an male brindle is I bred it to a visual brindle and I got no brindles. Okay. So was like, okay, it's definitely male. I can see that. But what else is it? And we ended up over some trials figuring out it's an male sunrise. And so this sunrise is like this completely other, it's another gene. It's another recessive gene. And it's different. It's pretty. It's really cool. And we're still figuring out fully, because there's some that I don't know if it's a hypo sunrise or if it's an male sunrise, because they look so much. Yeah. Alike.
So maybe I'm sorry. I hit the mic. I always do that. So maybe because I thought I was seeing the pictures on Morph Market. So are they not a form of albinism or male?
I think that what you were probably seeing me posting are hypo sunrise. They're at least hypo.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And when I've been seeing the very red ones that you've been posting up. Yep. Okay.
Yep. And neither those are not even the regular sunrise, because the regular sunrise has more. It's kind of hard to explain. Picture like a Mullendorfi kind of look. A sunrise kind of has that, but more of a yellow head. It's different. So there's a lot that we're still figuring out with that and what it means. And I couldn't approach where I got the sunrise from with more questions, because unfortunately that individual is in prison now. So completely unrelated to reptiles, but I'm like, well, that's the end of that line. I can't get any further than that. So it's tough, but I love them. And that's one thing that I will say has been great, is getting to be a part of what I would call a rejuvenation of a species, because we really were able to. We didn't start it. Iman started it over in Europe.
Okay.
He took great pictures of hypolavenders. That's what started some interest. We were able to take it and continue moving it, over here, and watch the level of interest really skyrocket on them again for us. Because then once you started getting calicos in the mix and chocolates now, and you start combining all that with the white sides, and now there's lightnings in there. So it's really neat. I mean, it's really fun.
And there's a lot of morphs there now. And
and there's still a lot of combos that haven't hit the market yet. I mean, or if they have, you don't see anybody talking about them. So there's still so much newness, or so many things that can be done with them. I think what limits some from doing a lot of the combos or trying to create them, although it's like the most prolific and widespread snake in the US, that means it's native to most of the states, and most states have some law against native reptiles.
Native species.
And so if it's a non-morph, so if you're making, double, triple, quadruple hets, you've now got, you may want that pair for yourself, but you can't legally sell all the rest of them. Type of thing. So you run into things like that on why I think that we don't see quite the number of combos as quickly as what we would in other species hit the market.
Gotcha. So, do you guys have any law in your state for that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, same thing. And this is where it gets technical, because my state is gray rat snakes. So Spiloides.
Gotcha.
And that's what they recognize. But black rat snakes, and to answer that, there's a comment there from Ivory, about obsoleta and Alleganesis. So, okay, I am not a biologist. You got the wrong half of the podcast on, so wrong half of CCR for that one. But I'll tell you this: the truth and logic in it is, I think what is now truly considered a black rat snake would be Alleganesis, although that also lumps in yellow rat snakes and Everglades, and yes, you got it, that kind of thing. So, but the problem,
and then also just to answer that, so Pantherophis obsoletus are
Western
rat snakes, or Texas, as I
and that's what ticks me off, and is because so. All right, I'm going to do my best to explain this out.
Go for it.
And there's going to be a lot of opinion here. I want to put that out there. There's a lot of opinion that you're about to hear on it. So first, before the paper came out that changed all the taxa, it was more of if you looked at a picture of the map, the range did this, went kind of east to west, and then you had a pocket down here, and then one over here, that kind of thing, right? So now it's more chopped like this, vertically split. So the problem with that is when we say what is a black rat snake now, you have what's considered eastern rat snakes would be the black rat snakes. Yep. The center is going to be grays, Spiloides, and then western. And the problem I have with western is you've got this little pocket down here where the Texas, came from, and that's what we recognize those as. But now it's everything up here is being lumped in with the Texas, and I really am not a fan of when Texas gets mixed with black rat snake. I want those separate. I'm a purist, on that. So that's why I hate to call a black rat snake at the moment, when historically they were all obsoletus to me. I hate calling them that now, because then it lumps them with Texas, and it's going to encourage people to breed Texas rat snakes with black rat snake mutations. And it's been done. There's so many mutts out there. We know that it's muddy.
Well, funny enough, there's this person who has messaged me on Facebook in China who has asked me about Texas rat snake morphs. And this was before I knew that you can't ship animals to China because it's basically illegal. But she was asking me, and I was like, and like trying to clarify. And I'm like, no, like that's a black rat snake morph. And like she was asking about like white-sided and some stuff like, and like calico and stuff, and she was calling them Texas. I'm like, no, I think you're maybe mistaken, or like it was sold to you wrong or explained wrong. But I'm like, those are black rat snakes, and then the Texas, like that's what we have here, and the morphs are supposed to be separate, but who knows what the hell is actually over there.
And then so the problem now is in the hobby, to a certain degree, you just have to accept what it is. And I say that because if what is now considered a black rat snake, if that's an Eastern, then every black rat snake in the hobby that was bred by its old range is now a mutt with, you know, all these different, with the Westerns. So you've got obsoletus and Alleghenisis. So if we actually were to run DNA, well, and I'll give you another example. So lemon rat snakes, which is known as a gray rat snake mutation.
I was going to say, so those, I wanted clarification on that, because I've seen you post them, but so they're grays.
Yes, lemon is recognized as a gray rat snake mutation. Calicos are recognized as a black rat snake mutation.
Yep.
They were found in the same county. They originate from the same county.
Okay.
Yes. So my thing is, now, will I cross lemon into any black rat? Nope. Because it's recognized by the hobby at this point as just gray. It's going to stay gray with me. Calico, on the other hand, it's already in black rat. It's, you know, recognized as black rat. So yes, I will do, you know, combos. But that's what I'm saying is, at this point, because of how muddy it's gotten, there's some things we just have to accept as the only way you are going to know you have a true black rat snake by the current taxonomy. You're just gonna have to go catch them. You know, that's it.
Yeah.
That's all you can do. So it's also like, I mean, when shipping and you have to label the box, there's an argument on, you know, is it obsoleta? Is it Alleghenisis? It's
right.
You know, it's muddy is what it is. You know, that particular species is tough. So it's a rough one. And it's a long topic.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah. Awesome. So that was a lot of cool history on black rat snakes. So was excited to hear about that. Now I definitely want to go back to a couple of the Asian species that I wanted to drive focus on. The green bush rats. And I'm sorry, the tree scientific is Persinum?
Persinum.
Or Persin. Okay.
It'll go both ways, Persina and Persinum, but Persinum is typically what it's called now.
Okay, got it. Cool. So yeah, let's talk about those guys, because I feel like those are like one of the lesser common, I guess, Gonyosoma species. So super curious to hear about them a little bit.
Sure.
And I know you work with them pretty readily.
Yeah, and those are some that I think, you know, it's funny because I thought I finally nailed it, because I've produced them every year for the past 6 years, I think. But I've always had issues in incubation. I've hatched some every year, don't get me wrong, but not nearly as successful with them as what I'm sure Justin, just put the keyboard away, Justin. So anyway, the cool thing about them is, so they're fairly easy to get to breed. You just got to have them together at the right time. And they breed in the fall and then they lay in the spring. So that's where I think some people would kind of mess up, is they would hibernate them, brumate them, and then put them together in the spring. You've already missed your chance at that point.
Gotcha.
Now they will breed multiple times throughout the year, but their typical cycle is breeding in the fall, laying in the spring. So I typically am going to keep my trios together year round. Like I've got a trio display here at the shop in a 36 by 36 by 18
nice
Exoterra bioactive display, and, you know, nice luminize UV on them, and just all set up.
Yeah.
So I thought that I thought I had it all figured out, because the change I made this past season was left all the breeding just like I was doing before, but I incubated at room temperature instead of incubating at like 80. And I got a better hatch rate, out of them that time.
Oh,
And so I'm like, okay. And that was something Matt had already advised, try this, do this with him. So
yeah.
I went with it and it worked. I got a better hatch rate. So I'm thinking, okay, now we're on. I've got one clutch so far this year, and they were all duds. And I'm like, really?
Oh,
I figure out the incubation, and now you guys are going to throw duds at me. I'm like, so now that was only one female. There's still plenty that, but I'm not, they don't really look gravid to me. So we'll see if maybe they just go a little later than normal.
So you got the clutch, I guess it was like right after you moved into the shop, and then this year, like now they should be laying, you're saying? And
yeah. I've already I had one female lay, and they're all duds.
Oh,
and
man.
So, and I mean, I've got 8 females. And so the fact that I'm not getting, those, I'm like, what's going on this year, guys?
Yeah.
So that one, it may be the first year I miss on them in the past 6, but I still have several females that could lay. We'll see what happens with them. But that's another species that they are, if I produced 50 more of them, I'd sell all 50 of them. There's a lot of interest in them. I mean, it's a green snake that's easy to care for too. I do actually put some heat on them, but it's a large enough enclosure they can get completely away from it, but they will utilize it. I'll watch them crawl up there and bask a little bit, underneath the heat light, but they don't have to have it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
But they do well. They tend to eat pretty easily. It's not a problem. But the overall, I mean, it's just there's still that whole trick with the breeding where, like I said, I was producing eggs, but wasn't getting the right incubation. Now I've got the right incubation, but not producing eggs. So there's a reason why we don't see so many of them in the hobby is it's not full. I mean, really, I think there's just a handful of us that are successful routinely, with them in the US. But it's a cool one, man. It's another one where I think that this is a species I would recommend UV for.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you about that. Like, what's been the experience with, because you mentioned it, the UV lighting? Because I know a lot of people have been doing the rhinos with that kind of setup, and I feel like the green bush rats are on a similar like kind of spectrum in terms of care.
Well, and I guess, and again, I'm not the science side, of CCR, but just logic tells me it's a green snake that spends a lot of time in trees and in bushes during the day. It's diurnal. And with that in mind, UV has to play a benefit to it. So what I did was I hooked up a 6% Arcadia Luminize on it and set it where it's got a dawn, a peak, and a dusk. And the very first day, within 30 minutes of me turning that light on that cage, 2 of the 3 went up, perched, and basked right underneath it. So they were obviously using it. And
very cool.
We'll see what happens. Justin, to answer your question there, I was incubating at ambient room temperature inside the nursery, and that particular room will have temperature fluctuations because of where it's located in the building. So it would have had a nighttime drop as well. And that incubation, I want to say, ran somewhere around 80 days, between 70 and 80. It did run longer than the typical 60, for sure.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. Cool. All right. Awesome. And then I also wanted to move on. We've only talked about them a little bit on here, but it was an episode you did kind of recently on CCR, the Carinata king rat snakes. Those are something that are very cool, and I think just their colors and even their natural appearance tends to draw people in overall, just because they have, some of that base with the black and the yellow speckling. It's just like so cool. So talk about your experience with some of the Carinata stuff, because I know there's morphs and I know there's
So with the Carinata, I think there's 2 things that draw people to them. One is obviously that coloration, when you've got that black and gold on there. And then, I mean, you've got the mutations that are really pretty too. But that black and gold is stunning. And then it's the face. they've got a face on them, and they always look angry. They kind of look like an unhooded cobra, in that face structure.
Definitely.
They've got the brow, and everything. So the Carinata they're an intelligent snake. I mean, they're one that whenever you're in the room, they're going to follow you if they're interested. Some don't care, but if they're interested, they're on you, and they're going to pay attention. They strike hard at food when they hit it. I've got a mix when it comes to disposition, and they've got a bad reputation out there of being real mean, and literally it's a third of mine won't ever even act like they're going to strike. They get big. You're talking an 8-foot snake is big around as my forearm, and they don't stop moving. I mean, they want to get away from you. They're not a come hold me kind of snake. But a third of them won't ever even act like they're going to strike. There's a third of them that if I frustrate them, they will. And then there's a third of them that are begging me to open that cage. It's so it's a luck, and and really so many of them come from the same lineage of like T negative albinos I'm working with, that it's not all their babies are not. No. A third of their babies are nice. A third of them are and a third of them want to eat me. So that's just how I've, rolled the dice with them so far. But same thing. You can learn their behaviors. I don't take shots from them, and I'm moving them from one cage to another, during breeding season all the time.
Right.
But you gotta be careful. You gotta know what you're doing with them.
Yeah.
They don't hook well either. So you can get the hook, but you have the hook long enough to get them moving, so they realize, so they're not in their postured stance. And once I have them moving, then I grab the back third, and kind of move them wherever I need to go. But yeah, don't think you're just going to hook them and they're going to chill on it. Nah, they don't like that either. Those things, they're chow hounds. I mean, you're talking mice, rats, fish, if you want to, quail, chicks. I mean, they'll take it all. You have to be careful though, because it is easy to overfeed that species. Because they do get so big and hefty that, you're like, oh, well, yeah. I mean, they can take two medium rats, no problem. But it puts on weight, and it's not so much that they even look obese. It's not like that. But what I noticed is their breeding really slowed down. And it was, my smaller ones were breeding like crazy. My big ones are like, let's just see what's on TV. That kind of mentality. So just be careful not to overfeed them. Same thing. I don't put they're in the Asian room. We have an entire room that's just Asian species and things like black milks, and we don't put any heat on those either. So I keep them on aspen. I actually think they do better on aspen than what they do on cypress. One time I had an issue with one that it had like a scale rot that started, and it was cypress. They're keeled snake. They don't need the humidity quite like the other Asians do. But I do provide them the hide box with moist cocoa fiber, in there, and they seem to be right. The only issue, and I mentioned this on CCR once too, that the only problem I found with them in aspen, they have bigger nostrils because it's, they're big snake. And some aspen can be dusty. And so there's been a couple times where I've walked in and I've seen where one was mouth breathing. And I thought, I've got, a respiratory issue, something like that. And it turned out not, but they were in shed. And it only happens when they're in shed. And I got to look in and I could see, that it's like, blocked and shed, and you could see it on the shed and everything. It was just them getting that dust out, and then they're fine. Everything's back to normal. So that's just something that, and no one else may ever notice it. I don't know, but it's something I've noticed with mine. So Max asked about feeding other snakes. I haven't tried, but they did it without me wanting them to. Yes, king rats will eat other snakes for sure. I had a het hypo female kill, and pretty much halfway had it down, our visual hypo male. And hypo is, I don't want to say it's the rarest in the country as far as morphs. There's tons of morphs in China and over in Asia that we don't have over here yet. But out of the ones that are here, it's one that's very hard to get your hands on. So when I walked in and
Right.
saw that, I was not happy. That wasn't a fun phone call to have to make either. Hey, Matt, because that was a joint project.
Oh boy.
You know that hypo male we had? Yeah. Well, I still have him, but he ain't moving, So, but yeah, it was something crazy, man. It sucked. But that's actually the only time I've ever had it out of them. But what it taught me was I make sure that if I'm putting two of them together, you can watch their behavior in the beginning, but that didn't happen until day 3 of a pair being put together. And the problem is they're such a shy species. They're not going to just go at it and wrap up to breed like a corn snake is right in front of you. So you have to put them together and let them go.
Yeah.
So I make sure that everybody's fed. And I've now learned that my male's got to be as big as the female or bigger. And as long as I follow that, I've not had any issues since then. Males have never even shown interest in wanting to hurt a female. So
gotcha. Okay. And now I'm actually curious with the morphs on those guys, especially as babies, because I know like the normal babies start out, I'm going to call them like semi-ugly, like a dullish color.
Brown.
And then they really age into some nice coloration. How do the morph animals kind of start out and then develop? Do they go through that kind of, I assume they don't start the same color brown, but do they start kind of duller and uglier and kind of age into it?
They start different is how I'd probably describe it, because you have T negative albinos, T positive albinos. Right. You have hypos, and then there's others that really haven't made it big over here yet. There's lemons, there's leucistics. I think there's even a scaleless. There's anery, so there's snows, and I think I know there's some aneries over here now. But they do hatch out different than what they're going to look, because they still go through that change. Like, for example, the one that's most people would be able to get their hands on fairly easily be a T negative albino. And they hatch out with more of an orange look to them. Okay. And then as they grow, they turn into like a highlighter yellow. So they do. So it's like, I don't want to. Neither one of them are ugly as a baby or an adult as a T negative. Right. They look good at both times, but they're different, from one time to another. The T positive doesn't go through quite as much change because they have that little bit more of a darker look to them, like a darker albino, like a T positive in just about any other species. Right. And as they get bigger, they will develop some more of that purplish, brownish. When I say brownish, it's like a pretty purplish. Brownish, kind of like that. Yeah. So it's, but they don't show that as babies. It's not until they get bigger that you get it. So,
okay. Awesome. Yeah. And then, before we kind of move along, were there any other colubrids that you're kind of jacked about right now that you kind of want to highlight? I definitely wanted to talk about the 4 that we did mention. But any others that are kind of like stand out for you in the collection right now? Some you've grown like a bigger affinity for, ones that you're just excited for the future of?
Hands down, gray banded kings.
Okay.
Absolutely. That was a big time. I say big time. I had like 3, but it was a struggle species for me 20 years ago. Now, given we had no idea how to take care of them 20 years ago, there wasn't the information that we had. Well, I say 20 and maybe longer than that. And I've always thought they were beautiful, but struggled a little bit with them. And then, they're notorious for babies being difficult to get to eat. Yeah. And so that keeps so many people away from them. Well, I bought a collection from a veterinarian in Iowa, and it came with 180 animals. And I want to say about 35, 40 of them, if not more, are gray banded king snakes. There's some black eye. And it was like, you know what? I've got this huge injection now of breedable, adult gray bands, different localities, and, all these looks that it's okay. Now's the time for us to really try to do something with these. And breeding was cake. I mean, I think we produced somewhere around 50 babies, this first round. And so that part was exciting, seeing all these beautiful little baby gray bands come out. You know, it was stoked, but then it's like, we got to get these to eat. You know, now's the hard part, right? And we struggled. You know, we did lose some, but we ended up finding, because we were trying all the different things. We're trying anoles, you know, sitting with anoles. We're sitting with house geckos, because those are the ones that they're the easiest for me to get my hands on from a like pet shop perspective. We were working with skinks, because we've got 5-line skinks right here around us.
Okay.
However, the lizard that I found works the best are Western fence lizards, and we don't have those here. And if anybody is listening or watching this, I need them, or I need their shed. Reach out to me. I'll pay. I need it. Okay. But those skins work great, like the sheds and quail. I would take some down from a frozen baby quail, and those two worked very, very well. So with that knowledge, I mean, we ended up having somewhere around 20-ish, you know, maybe a little more, that took off, done well. And I mean, the market is fantastic for them. If I take gray bands to a show, they do not come home with me at all.
Nice.
And they shouldn't, because I mean, you go to a show and you may see one table that's got 2 of them, you know, kind of thing. That they're just so, and they sell so quickly because you don't see them so often. They're so pretty. And especially when someone asks, what are they eating? Because they're always going to ask you that. And when I go, you know, unscented, and they're okay, I'll take them. I'll take both of them, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah. So, and with them being so pretty, and us having what I would call medium success our first year out of the gate, you know, working with that species this past year, we're stoked for this year, because now we've learned, you know, what tricks are the best tricks to try first. And instead of, you know, okay, let's try that as a last resort. No, that's the one that worked most often. That's the first trick to try.
Yeah.
So we're excited to see what kind of success we have with them. And they're my current like pet project. You know, I think that for those of us that are into colubrids, we always are going to have like that maybe favorite species. Maybe it's not, we always like colubrids, but what is really exciting us changes. You know, we go through cycles through different genus and, you know, stuff like that. And so right now, that one's probably the one that's got me the most excited, because I see so much potential. And it's not even potential on what can be done with it. It's potential on it's right there. You know, I don't have to I mean, I've got anery, I've got hypo, I've got ghost, and I've got het leucistics, but I don't have to chase morphs with gray bands. I mean, they're like the Asians.
Definitely don't.
And, you know, with so few people really producing these with the regularity, and, you know, with you know, you just mentioned it earlier, the availability of quail it's out there so easy. And if, you know, more, you know, lizards are becoming more and more easily available as a feeder source for some, it's really something I think people could get behind, that species, and up the population, you know, in captivity for sure. So
I'm really surprised to hear about the quail working with them, especially with a king snake species. Like, that just wouldn't strike me as like the solution for them, because it's usually like, you know, a lizard or amphibian or something.
Yeah, it's I thank Jason Hood for that. And because he sent me some, because he wanted to, he's got some gray bands that he's raising up, and he goes, you know, I want to know if this works, you know, kind of thing. So he sent me some, I tried it, and it was great. And you know, with that, it worked almost as well as what the fence lizard skins did.
Nice.
So awesome. Chad Gordon, I'll thank him too. Chad Gordon sent me the fence lizard skins that were working.
Cool. Very nice. Any others you want to touch on species wise on colubrids before we kind of dive in a little bit to the shop and some of the stuff there?
I mean, you know, I can talk about any of them. I've got,
I know.
we have a North American room, which encompasses some South American species too. We have an Asian room. We have a Southwest room, you know, so we kind of go through a lot. But yeah, I mean, the Montane Kings are awesome. You and I were talking earlier, the latest acquisition I'm really excited about is I was hunting for an adult male Rains rat snake for several years. And because I've got a breedable female, and we just got him in this week. So super excited to see if I'm able to do something with them. then,
Nice.
have another arboreal green snake to add to the mix. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Very cool. All right, cool. Now I want to talk about I feel like we could go on for so long about your Colubrid collection, but then also the shop, because I'm very intrigued to hear your mentality about a lot of things. And also before we even get into that, just some of the collection. So we kind of started it before, but like, you were before the shop, you were like full on snake guy, if I'm not mistaken, right?
100%. Yeah. I had, a gecko here and, a tortoise there, that kind of thing. But no, it was snakes.
Right.
100% snakes.
Right. So now taking on, so many other animals and then, trying to build on that knowledge. Like, I know you've mentioned it before, but like, I'm sure that learning experience has been just amazing, just learning all these different species. And, it's the one thing I preach to people about diversifying their collections is just like, you learn so much, even within one individual within a species.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you get two different behaviors and stuff. So what is that kind of like just learning experience been like?
It's been fantastic. I mean, and that's one of the things where you if you're going to do something like this, and really if you're going to continue to grow in animals, you put the ego away. I may have been doing this for 30 years and I can tell you, so much with certain species of snakes inside and out, but I'm asking my associates questions on bearded dragons.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're teaching me. And that was one of the things I did was, I knew where my weaknesses were on some of the more common species. And so I make sure that I bring on teammates that are good at those species, that know bearded dragons. I know nothing about inverts, or I didn't. I've got a better knowledge now than what I did, but I make sure I've got a teammate that's solid on inverts, and
Nice.
She teaches me about them. And it does it, like I said, it continues to rejuvenate me learning, different things about these different species. And I've always been big on continuing to gain knowledge, not just myself. I love my teams to do the same thing. And in fact, one of the things we do here at the shop every day when associates are working, they get 15 minutes to study whatever species they've been assigned. And so typically like it may just be boas, for example, and I'll have a book that I want them to read, and it may take them 2 weeks, 3 weeks to get through this book, but they stay on that book. They get 15 minutes paid time a week of study to sit down and study that. We're going through there's a ZooMed university online. And it goes through different lighting and housing and all kinds of things. And that's what I've got a lot of them doing now. And it's because I want all of us to continue to learn and have more general knowledge, on so much. And then we can start diving deeper and deeper into the species. I look at it as general knowledge is what helps you set something up. And then the deep dive is what helps you be able to answer I have this problem question.
Yep.
100%. So that's kind of that's what we do. That's our mentality on it is we're going to learn as much as we can about as much as we can.
Yeah. No, that's very cool. So part of what I wanted to talk about, especially with you in the shop and now having such a diverse collection and you also do the market update with CCR. I've been curious to kind of get a grasp of your thoughts on the current scope of the reptile market. What have you been seeing? Like, what are the trends? And of course, your store like is a one-off. So I'm sure what's going on at your store isn't necessarily the entire, country-wide what's going on. But like, what are some trends you've been seeing in the marketplace, just in general?
Sure. So where a lot of the opinions that you're about to hear, I guess I want to cite some sources first, so everyone knows where I get this. One, it's the shop. That's one thing I look at, and it's funny because the shop often goes against what I see everywhere else, and I'll explain that in a second.
Yep.
So the shop is one lane of our company's business, right? The other is online sales, and that's where you're going to see national movement.
True.
The third is going to be regional shows. Okay. Those are the three things where I get my eyesight, on what's happening.
Yep.
But then you get morph market numbers. And, not only do I see the numbers that everybody else can as far as what's listed compared to, okay, now 2 weeks later, what's listed, but I talk to Darian pretty regularly, and he'll fill me in on some things. The Show Me Reptile show is one of CCR's sponsors. Yep. I talked to Mickey. He's one who's, helping with Colubrid Fest, doing a big part of it, honestly.
Yeah.
But I may have a opinion on what I'm seeing at shows, and he's able to either tell me I'm right or wrong based on factual numbers, on what he's seeing. And the great thing about me asking Mickey is my perception is the one show that I was at that one weekend, you know what I mean? And what I saw there. Mickey has shows in 50 cities across the country. So he's able to take more of a, national look at what's happening. So with all that being said, that's where all this comes from. It also, I'm not just a guy that's into reptiles, and I'm not saying this with any type of arrogance whatsoever. It's the last 20 years, my day-to-day job was operating a district that was responsible for about $30 million a year. All over the country, it was understanding business. It was paying attention to the numbers, reading the trends, and making decisions based on, what those told me. So that's where all this comes from. And what I see at the shop is a mix. I barely sell Asian rat snakes in my store. Very rarely. Ball pythons, we'd sell a lot for a while. And that's because the city of Evansville, we're in Chandler, which is right outside Evansville, basically southern Indiana. Okay. It's still a ball python market. That's what people were used to around here. So the shop, we would do that, but they're not even the number one. Bearded dragons sell like just crazy out of this shop. But
I feel like that's a lot of places. Even the shop I worked at in New York, like when we had baby bearded dragons, those things would fly faster than a lot of things. People like bearded dragons.
Well, and we have a very large, deep red male named Sriracha that's out on display. Anybody can come in and hold him at any point, and he's our breeder. He's like our primary breeder, so everybody wants his babies specifically. So they sell very, very quickly. But that's what I see locally as far as and when we say reptile market, I'm primarily going to talk about snakes, because it's crested geckos are saturated market, which kind of, leads to gargoyles, and some of the others are just not moving quite as fast. Monitors seem to still be doing just fine. And bearded dragons, it depends on what you have and where they're moving, where you're selling them. But the snakes are what I tend to study a little more on a national scale, because that's really, if I'm going to take things to a show, it's primarily snakes. I'm leaving most of the lizards at the shop. So we hear over and over doom and gloom, markets crashing, yada, yada. And that's not the case. It really isn't. The ball python market is going through a correction. And it does this about every 8 years. However, it's going, there's a reason. There is a reason why this happens every 8 years to the ball python market, and they do it to themselves. And I'll mention that in just a second on why it occurs where you don't see it happen in the other markets. But we all know that COVID came through.
Yep.
Then all the stimulus money was dumped in, and everyone's sitting at home on their phones. So they're bored. They've got more money. As long as you took a solid picture and posted it, animals were selling and selling fast. Yeah. And now here we are a few years later, these animals are reproducing, or, the individuals are not as excited about them anymore, that kind of thing. And that was, whatever I say, animals were selling fast, that was all segments. It didn't matter. Colubrid, ball python, whatever. It was all segments were moving.
Okay.
But which segment sold the most during that time? Ball pythons, right?
Yeah.
That's the biggest. Ball pythons make up about 76%, typically 76 to 80%. And that's not a statistic I'm pulling out of my rear.
I took screenshots of the charts you posted.
I've got them.
Yeah.
So that's what they make up as far as just snakes, taking everything else out. And so they obviously sell, the most, more than anything else. Well, where we're at now, everyone thinks that ball pythons they're not selling as fast. And it was actually up until a few months ago, basically in 23, the same number of ball pythons, actually, I think it was a 3% increase, were sold on Morph Market than the year before. And so really 3% on something that big is pretty much flat, is what you want to call it. But the problem is the same amount sold, but how many more were produced in 23 versus 22? Because every year there's more than there was the year before.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that the demand fell, it was that the supply outpaced it. And there wasn't the extra money. So that was problem number one that kind of started to happen for ball pythons. Well, then when I talk about this correction that occurs about every 8 years, it's hitting them even harder now because it's a COVID correction on top of it, right?
Yeah.
The reason that happens is with colubrids, I'll use those as the example, but you can use any, and I'm going to say the word product, although that's not really how I like to refer to animals. But for what we're talking about right now, any consumable out there, the price 5 years ago to today, unless there's a macroeconomic event that occurs, such as some major inflation or whatever, the price goes down historically, right?
Yeah. And
it's a little bit. So if there's we'll say a $500 colubrid, 3 years later, it's $450. 2 years later, it's $400, right? And so it's a steady decline over time. Where ball pythons, on the other hand, if it's a $1,500 snake, it's attempted to be held on at $1,500 for too long. And it becomes an artificial inflation where if you end up with, they're selling, don't get me wrong, but they're selling for less than $1,500, just not advertised that way, right? Okay. Yep. And that's the only place where people are concerned with crashing the market if they change it, where with colubrids, that's never really discussed. People just sell it for what they sell it for. But that's why it's meant, that's why it gets said with ball pythons so often is, oh, that guy's crashing the market, because you finally have someone who puts it at a price it probably should have been if it would have been slowly lowered over time. But then you're 5-6 years in this $1,500 morph is still attempting to be held at $1,500. Well, now you've got 5,000 people holding on to 100 of these a piece and are tired of holding on to them. So that $1,500, the first guy comes out and drops it to $1,200. The next one drops it to $1,000. The next one, $900. And all this happens in the span of a month. And so it went from $1,500 to $900 in 4 weeks. And when you see that happen to one, that causes a panic to this next one, to this next one. And it's this domino effect where if they would just let it come down naturally like it should, you wouldn't have this cycle that we see that occurs. It's about every 8 years, typically, is kind of what it's running. So
that's a really interesting take that I have not heard before from other people in even the ball python circle. No one's really kind of made that apparent. So I really appreciate you saying that. And hopefully that gives some insight to some people. You're basically saying people are expecting them to hold this price for too long. And then eventually that's why they tank so quickly, because they just stood there for too long of a
Oh,
time.
it literally, the first time it happened, it was in a Daytona show. I'm sorry, at a Daytona show, and it was the banana ball python. And believe it or not, it's funny the way that business, it's really global now. And
yeah,
I can connect the Mexican black king snake surge with the fall of the banana ball python. That was step one. I mean, it's wild when you can step back and really see the big picture of how this all, kind of entwines. So first off, before the banana fell, you had Mexican black king snakes were as low as like $30 a piece, right? And we've all heard that many times. We've had a lot of people complain that, Mexican black king snakes, people are scalping them. They're, how are they $200? They used to be 30. There's no way they should be $250, at the time. And really,
right.
I can't help but chuckle because I'm like, okay, everybody who is complaining, about Mexican black king snake prices, raise your hand. Okay, now put your hand down if you owned Mexican black king snakes and you had them at the time it went up. All the hands are still up because anybody who had them when the price went up, they weren't complaining. It was only the people that didn't have them that started complaining, right?
Yep.
So, but anyways, so what happened with those is you have a lot of individuals who stopped producing them. They either stopped producing Mexican black kings, or they were producing them and shipping them to Asia, because there was really just a couple, one in particular, importer over there. They were after all black snakes, white snakes, and black and white snakes. That's what was just incredibly popular, over there at the time. Then it expanded into some of the colors. But I remember posting a picture of 3 Mexican black king snake clutches that all were laid the same day. And I just thought that was neat.
Okay.
So I took a picture, I posted it, and within 20 minutes, I get a message from this individual, and he bought every one of them right then and there. And it was just, if, any of those don't hatch, we take that money out of, the price that he'd already paid. So, wow. I mean, it was that fast, bam, and
wow.
He was doing that with any he could find. So the only people that you were ever seeing that had Mexican black king snakes available were either overseas or PetSmart, Petco.
Okay.
Because they already had contracts with people. So they were, shoveling them to them.
Right.
Well, inside those stores, they're selling them for $200, $250 a piece. That's if you wanted one, that's how much you were paying. Well, then what happened was, and all that happened because ball pythons surged, right?
Okay.
Banana ball python prices were trying to be held at I think it was $22,000 at this particular year in Daytona, and they were saturated because so many people had them and were holding them that high for so long that there started this one guy lowered it. And I don't know what he lowered it to, in the beginning, but it ticked off another, which ticked off another. And by the end of that weekend, those $22,000 snakes were on the table for, I think it was like $4,000.
Wow.
And this caused a panic, which caused so many ball python prices to fall, which then caused individuals to turn around and start looking at colubrids again and wanting to, some of those things they had before, Mexican black king snakes being one of them, realizing they couldn't find them. So those of us that had them, we were being bombarded for them. Well, we're not going to sell them for $50 a piece when I've got 50 people waiting on them. That's why the price shot up. It went from the ball python market to the Asian market to the fall of banana ball pythons to cause the Mexican black king snake prices to skyrocket. That's what happened. And it's, in a way, things like that are continuing to happen with the, some of the shakeup in ball pythons now. But even the ball python market is not as scary as what people want to make it out to be. I mean, we just saw, I think it was an 11% dip. And I based that off of the number of animals that are listed on Morph Market 2 weeks ago, compared to today kind of thing.
Yep.
And it was the biggest movement in ball pythons that we've seen since I've been tracking it back in January.
I arbitrarily kind of just look at it every couple days or so, and it has been on a decent, steady decline. But we are approaching hatchling season, and I talked with some other friends who are very analytical, and we saw the number it shot up to last year, and now all the COVID breeders, which all the people who got in within the last couple of years are really going to start producing a lot of animals this year. So it's going to be very interesting to see where that number goes to, because who knows?
No, I completely agree. And what has caused this movement on ball pythons now, 50% of all the ball pythons that have been sold in the past month were auctions. And that's straight out of Darian's mouth, because I thought that, and I stated it on our last episode, but then me and him were talking on the phone, and he was like, he brought it up to me before I even asked. And I was like, I knew it. I knew it. I had a feeling that was the case. But basically what that tells me is there is still a demand for them out there, or those numbers wouldn't have been moving. But what we're finding is they're just now getting them down to the prices that they're willing to pay for them and where they, see them, which, the auctions, they're probably going cheaper than what they would actually sell for if individuals would just price them lower than where they have them now, if that makes sense, So instead of only getting, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I've seen a couple people post the same animal multiple times with like a very similar reserve, just like hoping to get it. Like, this animal went to auction 5 times and it finally sold like on the 5th time. And we were just like, dude, like, what are you doing? Like, you realize like you're just not going to get that price on it. And I won't lie too. I've sold a few ball pythons, the one clutch I produced last year. I've sold a few via auctions. I mean, it's been a helpful tool, and and you're 100% right. I'm not getting the price I originally had them at, and maybe it's a little more realistic, but it is what it is. I mean, people want the animals though. People are bidding. There's a lot of new members on Morph Market, which is really good to see in general. I think a lot more pet people are starting to join Morph Market now.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, that was kind of something that Darian was targeting, specifically. I know he spent a lot of money in advertising. I mean, it's, if you go on any web page at this point and, you're going to have a Morph Market ad pop and hit you. And that's by design, obviously.
Yeah.
But so, do they sell as quick and easy as they used to? No, there's going to have to be different avenues to do it. But, so that there's your national, right? That piece there. We talked about the shop. Well, I'll mention shows for a minute too. I just don't miss at the shows. And what I mean by that, I'm not saying that I'm walking, just my pants are falling down because there's so much cash in them. No, it's not that. It's any show I go to, I don't walk away angry. I have like a minimum that this is what I want to hit to make the entire day worth it, the travel worth it, all that.
Right.
This is the number I want. This next number is where I'm like, okay, it was successful, right? And even the slow shows, I still do well. But the reason is 95% of the tables, we know what's on it. I don't put those on mine, or rarely do I put it on mine. I used to, like a year ago, but for the past, I don't think I put a ball python on any of my tables at the show at all this year so far. And I've been doing a lot of shows.
So here's what I'm curious about to hear from you genuinely. Do you think, because you have a very big reputable name, do you think it's people coming to see you, or do you think it's people walking in to buy colubrids, or perhaps a mix of both?
It's both. Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that, yes, the name has started to carry, it's, with the podcast and things like that.
Of course.
It's also, I'm starting to do shows more regularly where
I've been noticing that.
Yeah. And it's where I'm hitting the same shows routinely. So people know he's going to be here and here's what he's going to bring. And it's kind of if I've got 2 tables, 3 tables, whatever set up, and I'm covered with colubrids, I've got maybe 2 other tables that, have anything similar as what I have. And they're not going to have all the Asians. They're not going to have the gray bands. They're, you know what I mean? So I'm going to be different. And with that in mind, I don't have to walk around and see what everybody's prices are. It doesn't matter, because what I've got's different than what everyone else has at the show. And the reason I stopped bringing ball pythons, it wasn't because I thought, well, ball pythons aren't going to sell. No, there's still people walking around buying ball pythons, but it's one, I don't have anything that's going to be super different than anybody else. And at that point, unless you're unless you're Canova, unless you're Bob Vu, there's very few people that are buying ball pythons from a set breeder just because of who that breeder is, unless they're a really big name.
Right.
And so really at that point, all you're doing is competing with price. That's it.
Yep.
And if you're just competing with price, you're hoping they see your price before they make their purchase, or they come over and then they notice, oh, yours was $25 cheaper, that kind of thing. And so while yes, there's a salesmanship that goes into it too, where you can engage, have those conversations. Someone likes you and purchase the animal. But really with ball pythons, I mean, you're competing with price. That's 90% of it at this point. And I'd rather not even have to do that. Let's talk about these animals, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And because of that, because there may only be 10% of the people that walk into the reptile show I'm at that are there for colubrids, but who's got them? Only one person out of 100, so if 10% of the people are coming to 1% of the vendors, I win. And that's where, I kind of try to explain that, where even if you're going to do ball pythons, diversify, spread out.
Yeah.
Because if you put all your eggs in one basket, when, that basket is fraying, you're in trouble. And so I have a lot of friends that, they'll, at the end of the show, they're like, it wasn't a good show for me. And I'm just like, I did all right. I'm not going to dance in front of anybody, that kind of thing. It's not like that, but I've only ever, in my mind right now that I'm sitting here thinking, I only have one show that I can think of that I ever had a bad show. And I mean, it was a bad show all the way around. But that's just it. I mean, I hit my numbers that I'm there to do, every time. And it's, there are people who they've been looking at a certain species 2 shows in a row, their 3rd show. Now they've saved up the money that they needed to get it, and it's that kind of thing that happens. So that's what I'll say is cool. And there are other people at Tinley, for example, that some of them are, more heavy into boas, but they go, man, colubrids were flying off my table, that kind of thing. And it's people are just wanting different, they want to mix, it's finally kind of reached that tilting point. So.
Gotcha. And now here's what I want to know. So like the smaller local shows, now I assume that's where you have the bit more niche, but then what about shows like Tinley, where it is actually a more diverse show? Cause I know Tinley is one of your like home shows and it's a big show. How has the colubrid market looked at Tinley? And I know you're friends with some other vendors there and like, so yeah. Fantastic. You don't have to say like how you did, but like,
no, I'll say it's fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic. It's there. I did right at the same number that I did last year.
Okay.
And both were great numbers. And I think the only reason I didn't beat this year was because there were more colubrids there than previous. Because there's others who are, learning that. And I know that they did well too. And I'm thrilled for that. I mean, it's, because I've got a different mentality when it comes to other reptile keepers, breeders, vendors. So let's say, Joe, let's say you and I.
Yeah.
Let's say 75% of our collections were the same thing. Okay. Same thing.
Yep.
So naturally, a lot of people would say, okay, Joe, Joe's going to be some competition for you. Nope, you're not. Instead, what you are, if we like 75% of the same thing so far, there's probably a good chance that you're going to like something out of that other 25% that I've got.
Yeah.
You're not competition. You're a potential customer. That's how I see other breeders. I want other people at shows to continue to do well. I want them to do well because eventually there's going to be something they want that I have, and it's going to, go through. It's not just about me. It's instead of us fighting, and you know what? I'm going to tell you that this is something that Mickey Meyer, the owner of the Show Me Reptile Show, and I have talked about. And one of the reasons I wanted to have him on board for making Colubrid Fest happen. It's not about fighting over the piece of pie that we can have from this hobby, right? If there's, if here's the pie and this is all the money in that piece of pie, you have people bickering to try to make their piece bigger. Instead of fighting over that piece, grow the pie.
Gotcha.
That's the mentality. It is, I don't want to argue over any of this. I don't want to try to compete with anybody. Let's get more people in this hobby. Let's have more people enjoy it and continue
100%.
to grow the pie. That's what we're after.
And yeah, and that's like my biggest thing, and that's what I tell people is like when I'm, the couple shows I've vended, I've had a relatively small setup, and like, I flex my Texas rat snakes like they're the greatest thing in the world. It's because I always say, like, I think us as colubrid keepers, like the way we like get more people on our side is like we exude our passion out to other people and show them how cool these species are,
It's, I love it too. I have, this happens at every show. Now, I don't have massive display. I've got a nice size banner, and the tables look good, but I don't have some of the huge fancy things that I've seen done, at shows. But at every show, someone makes a comment about this is the best looking table here. Now, they're not talking about my setup. They're talking about this array of variety that they see as they scroll across that table and see all those colubrids and all those colors and, all this. And I love it when, like at Tinley, there's a gentleman who is always set up right across from me. We chat throughout the weekend. It's his company name's Muscles and Geeks, big stocky guy. And he does ball pythons. And, he comes over and he looks at the table and, every time he goes, man, you've got the coolest table every time. It just comes over and he's a ball python guy. And it's just because, and that's what it's about. It's not about one species over another. It's just being able to appreciate the animals you're looking at. And it's, so it's, and I know that we, like Zach and I, have this reputation of being anti-ball python, and that's not true.
No, you guys, no, not at all. And you guys, I've heard worse, like from sides of the colubrid community, just in Facebook comments. Like you guys, like barely even tread that line. So don't ever think that you guys do. And that's coming from someone who does ball pythons as well and colubrids. So I'm able to see both sides.
And that's what I tell people. I've got like 150 of them. It's I still use them too. And I like what there's morphs that are exciting for me, and there's some that I'm like, but what it just comes down to enjoy it for what it is. And, if you are colubrid guys, don't become arrogant. Let's please don't put your nose up at ball python people, because at the end of the day, the ball python market has done wondrous things for this hobby. Know that. It has brought in so many people into the hobby that wouldn't have been here before. There's YouTube stars that have brought in millions into the hobby that they wouldn't have even been in the spot they were in if it hadn't been for ball pythons in the first place. There are products that wouldn't be here if there wasn't ball python money introduced into the hobby in the first place. So, I'm not going to disrespect ball pythons and what they've done, because it's certainly opened doors for me too. So, that's really what it comes down to, is just enjoy it. You know what I mean? Enjoy it, learn it. And if it's not your thing, it's not your thing. But, tarantulas aren't mine. But there's people that love them, and I love them. It's, if there's anybody listening to this right now and you're a bug person, then I bet you're on Facebook and you probably have seen the bug group, All Bugs Go to Kevin. It's got like 300,000, 400,000 followers. Kevin lives here and is in my shop once a week. The guy who started this massive group, and he's scared of snakes. And I wasn't a bug guy. And the two of us, we love talking about this and, learning these new things. He takes brilliant photographs and all that. So that's my point. It's just, it's the best thing you can do about a species or something that you're not as into, find somebody who loves them, because you're going to feel their passion, and it's going to make you respect that species that much more.
I think that's what I've been able to do for my friends in the ball python game is I have convinced a few of them like, hey, like you should like this, but like it's because I talk about them so much and like really demonstrate my passion for it. So I think that element, what you just said is 100% true and it's extremely important. So yeah. Now that leads us to the question, and let's take you out of the equation because again, you've been doing this for so long, but do you think that someone newer can be successful with colubrids or at least just a diverse collection, like as a sustainable business in the reptile industry?
Absolutely. It's going to take a certain series of steps to do it
Yeah.
properly, but absolutely, absolutely. It's the advice I would give if someone was wanting to do this, full time. One, it's not going to happen overnight. Don't try to make it. You can quickly and easily amass a large collection, and you can quickly and easily breed a large collection. But what you can't always do is quickly and easily sell all the babies produced from a large collection. So my advice would be, one, start small. Get your feet wet. Learn the species that you are bringing on and start to develop your network. Learn what happens at shows. What setups look good, what setups don't, what makes sense, what doesn't, what shows are good, what shows are not. Build an online presence. All those small things, you're building your network. Then you have your core species, the species or the kind of the group that you become really good at, right? For you, it's your Texas rat snakes right now, right? That's what you're known for. Continue with that, but diversify out slowly. And the reason is because you want to have that core that people think your name when they think of that group, but you don't have all of your, I'm going to say it, investment in just one, because when that market stumbles or has a year people aren't as interested, you have the others that continue. And if you go to a show, you don't want a table with nothing but Texas rat snakes, because then
of course
that's your only clientele is someone looking for that. But you want them represented on the table. So that's it. It's go slow, take your steps, and because the biggest mistake I see people make is they jump in too fast, too quick, and they realize I can produce all these babies. But one, I didn't realize I had to feed all these babies, and how much money that ends up taking when they're not, moving quick. And two, I don't have the network to be able to sell these babies yet. I don't have the name. I don't have the means. I don't even know where to advertise, that kind of thing. So, but it is 100% doable, absolutely. And I know that there's a lot of individuals that think that, ball pythons were the only ones you can do this with. And that's just not the case. And that's the exact opposite of what I would tell someone who's doing it right now. That's not the species I would go into. I'm not going to go into where I have to compete with 76% of the market. I'd rather go to where I'm competing with 3. And that's where I'm at right now with most of my species. There's only 3% of the market that is what I've got available.
Yep. Awesome. Yeah, really good insight. I appreciate that. Now, moving along, before we wrap up, we have to, of course, talk a bit more about the podcast, Colubrid and Colubroid Radio. So for those who don't know, you were not the original co-host, but then you stepped into that role, and I think you fit it very, very well.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, so what has that kind of like reception been like, where you guys are arguably, you're more well known than mine, but like you guys are like the faces of like the colubrid industry, I feel like in the country right now. Like people, anywhere I look or anyone I talk to, like people know about the show. So what has that been like for you guys, for you?
It's been fantastic. One, before I even go to that, I want to tell you, it's, Zach and I love what you're doing over here. In fact, it was because we had been talking about like the fact that you're live, you've got video, there's so many things we were talking about. And then it's like, hey, have you seen this Joe guy? And his, I mean, and we just dig it because, I mean, you're already doing so many things. We're hoping we get the time, and it's, a lot of this gray in the beard prevents us from it, but, we're loving it, man. And so,
Thank you.
So that's good. I really, really do dig it. But, so, obviously I was a massive fan of CCR from the get-go.
As was I.
I love those two to death. Zach and I, Zach had purchased some animals from me, years back. So we knew who one another were. Matt and I, great friends, had partnered on so many projects, and I was their first guest. And then I listened to every episode. I'm listening, and I was a huge fan of the show. I just loved the kind of the philosophy behind it, right? And the ethics, I guess, that it carried. And so then when Matt had messaged me and we talked, and basically, it started off with the two of them were having trouble both being able to record at the same time.
Yeah.
And so it was more of a, hey, when we can't, can you step in and fill in for either one of us? And I'm like,
right,
absolutely. I'd love to. And so we did that. And then, I mean, it was very quick that, Matt, things continued to change for him on his career path. And, things are going just incredibly fast for him. And it was more of a, you know what, I don't think I'm going to be able to do it. So he stepped out, and I'm like, yeah, I can absolutely do this full time. And then what Zach and I found was we're so different in our realms, that we occupy, but we share, we have the same mentality on things, and we have the same vision to a degree. There's times that I think, comes in where Zach's like, here's how I see it. And I'm like, boom. And it's all this too, kind of stuff. And, but we really connect. Zach and I enjoy each other a lot. Too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it makes for a very natural way of communicating. So you've got Zach that brings all of the academia and the science behind it. And he pronounces the big words that I can't, and all of that. And then, I'll bring, the market and how things are looking in this different perspective, and how things are, happening within the hobby, not just in a, how do we take care of the animals, but what are the views, on this and that, and how people are reacting to it. And it's been so exciting for both of us to watch this growth that's taken place. And it's really been incredible. And now to see where we're going with it. And, we're getting to give back in a way to a hobby that's really been such a huge part of our lives for so long. We're getting to create this Colubrid Fest. We're getting to make a part of that. Something we're hoping.
Question of the hour.
Yeah, I know.
Everyone's asking.
I know. We're getting to put that together. We're just a few steps out from, we've got sponsorship coming already.
Yeah.
We're a few steps out from, setting up Patreon and all that. And for us, any revenue that comes through, we've both got jobs. It's not about that. We get to now use this for conservation efforts. We get to do these kinds of things. And that's just like the future stuff. What we're doing every other week is we're bringing this expert knowledge from our guests on whatever species we have, and getting to share it in such a way that so many people just don't ever get. You don't get it when you Google it. It's those nuance pieces of, no, you got to tap the snake on this side of its face with the prey to get it to eat. You can't do that. You don't read that in a book. You don't find that, on Google. And so I love that we get to do that every other week. I love where we're going. There's even a thing that, and I know you guys hate me for this, there's a thing that Zach and I just discussed last night, and it's something that recently, and it's so funny when I say that we think so alike. We separately came up with this same idea, and then we called, we got on the phone call, and it's like, hey, I'm thinking about this. Oh my God, yeah, here's the one I was thinking about and whatever. But we have this other idea that once we have it picked out, locked in, all that, we'll share it with everyone. And it's not something that necessarily everyone's going to be involved in. It's not like that, but it was something that is exciting that CCR is going to be able to continue to try to do a good thing in our segment of the hobby.
Awesome.
And so we figured out something, and I think it's something that we can really do. So it's those kinds of pieces where it just continues to grow. Zach and I are going to be recording in just a couple days, and we're going to start doing some of our Patreon pieces is what we're going to get set up. So just a lot of good things moving, and it really has. It's funny because there's several episodes where Zach and we're exhausted. We're both so busy here lately, and we sit down and it's like, okay, man, it's going to be a rough one, to keep it up. But then we get 2 minutes into a conversation and it becomes all of the other crap just melts away.
Yep.
And it's just great, and it's, you
walk
talk
about
out,
reptiles.
Right.
What's better?
Yeah. It's almost like, you go out and have a drink with a friend, you get that same kind of decompression in a way, from it. So it has been so neat, so exciting. And we're not done yet. We're not done. There's still a lot more to come.
Yeah. Well, all I could say is, you guys are doing great things for the hobby and for colubrids in itself. And honestly, I probably wouldn't be doing what I'm doing without you guys. So I have you guys to thank for that, because I definitely take inspiration and some of your best guests, into my show. So I think it's awesome. So
well, thank you so much, Joe. Really appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. All right, man. So kind of wrapping up, I guess. So what would you say the future of Metazotics kind of looks like? What do you foresee in the next 3 to 5 years? Are there any big changes on the horizon? Is there anything you foresee, or just kind of keeping the train rolling?
So it's never going to be keep the train rolling for me. That's not the kind of guy I am. It's like literally right now where I'm sitting across from me on my wall, I have a whiteboard.
Okay.
And right now I have 3 categories on the whiteboard. There's a sales category. And what sales is basically I list things under there that if I can get these accomplished and get these things put in place, it will increase overall revenue for the store. For example, my top one right now is a bioactive class. I've been talking about it for ages and just haven't built it. We do a lot of bioactives in the store. People love them.
Yeah.
People want us to have a class in store for them to come learn how to do this. And that's one of the ideas. I've got another one that is margins. And basically what that is it's once I get this in place, it's not going to generate any more revenue, but it's going to save me money on the revenue that's already being generated.
Right.
And so I've got a list of those on what needs to happen. Then the next is organization. And that's things that it's not necessarily going to increase sales or cut expense, but it's going to create a smoother process. It's going to make us more efficient, or it's going to do something for, I'll give you an example, a chameleon rack. And what I mean by that is it's going to be a rack type system that displays all the chameleon species that we have, and it's on the showroom floor, but it makes it more streamlined. It looks better. The lighting looks better. Automatic misters, all this. So that's more of the organization piece. So that's just for this building, is what those are. But long term, in the next 3 to 5 years, and my family would probably think I'm crazy for this because of how busy we are right now, but I look to begin satellite locations. And what I mean by that is my building I'm at here remains the hub, but I want to have small I want to have the north side of Evansville. I want to have, so there's areas where people don't want to have to drive 30 minutes to buy rats. So I want smaller pockets. None of the breeders will be in any of these locations, that kind of thing, but we keep them fed. The thing is, before I do that, it's how do I scale is where, I'm at and keep the integrity that is Metazotics.
Of course.
And so it's,
Definitely,
I figured
definitely
that
a hard part when it comes to something like this with
Mhm.
animals, especially. So,
Yep. And it's, while I know I can, certainly get people in there that have the same drive and want to do, you also have you have to get the same knowledge over there. It's so when you
Yep.
walk into Metazotics, you feel comfortable with anyone in there that's telling you, advice.
Of
So
course.
that's, but yeah, Metazotics isn't stopping there. I want to continue to grow this because I want to try to bring the things. It's not a pet store. I'm not putting pet stores out there. I'm bringing reptile specialty shops, into these areas where you can't walk into PetSmart and buy heat tape. You can't, it's those kinds of things that we bring that you don't find, at any other shop. So that's a plan. I want to continue doing the things with CCR in a big way, where we've got a lot of plans with that, and Metazotics ties right into it. It's
Awesome.
I can't do one without the other one being successful, type of thing. So
of course. Awesome. So great to hear. And then my last and final question that I kind of ask everyone. So what is your kind of elevator pitch? What would you say to someone who's looking to get into a colubrid for the first time, whether it's a current reptile owner or a brand new keeper to the reptile industry? What's kind of your message to them to go colubrids?
First off, you're stepping into the most diverse family of snake that there is. You're going to have everything from these things that stay under 3 foot to 12 footers, easily. You're going to have every color, every attitude, every disposition, every type of climate, every type of habitat. You have the colubrids are the Barbie doll of the freaking snake world, because you can dress it up however you want to. And on top of having all of this choice, you get to learn. It makes you a better reptile keeper when you keep colubrids, because most are not a species that are just going to sit. They actually interact in a way that you learn behavior.
Yep.
They have to be in motion for you to really know what they're doing. And you start to pick up on differences, subtle cues. You can tell when your snake's not feeling well, because they actually have this personality in the first place that tells you, when you're not seeing that personality, that something's gone wrong. You're going to get more enjoyment, more stimulus, from a colubrid than you are, any other type of snake. And there's going to be other reptiles you'd get that from too. But if you're going the snake route, you're going to have fun, and you're not going to stop at one. I can tell you that right now. And that's it. I only ever have to pitch you your first colubrid, because once you have your first one, and I always tell people, nobody has 5. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 19, 20, 21. It just, once you start. So,
I think this should be the official Colubrid Fest t-shirt.
Colubrid's the Barbie doll of the reptile world.
There you go.
I love it. It's happening. We're making those, Zach.
Yeah. Well, hell yeah, man. So this has been a fantastic, just about 2 hours. There's been anywhere from like 15 to 30 people in here the entire time. A bunch of people coming in and out. What do you have to say to everyone who tuned in to hear us talk tonight?
Well, hey, I certainly appreciate everyone who has hopped on. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for supporting me, supporting CCR. Thank you for supporting Joe. Anyone who's doing things for the colubrid community or the reptile community as a whole, I'm all for. So, really appreciate you guys taking the time. Hopefully it was worth your time. I hope you enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah.
And please, check us out on Colubrid and Colubroid Radio if you haven't already, as well as metazotics.com.
So I put, for anyone who wants to check it out, I put both Clint's Instagram at Metazotics in the description, as well as at Colubrid and Colubroid Radio. So Go
Great.
click those links, check them out, give them a follow, all that. Anywhere else people can reach you or see your stuff?
You can reach me on Facebook, Clint Bartley, or the Metazotics Facebook page. You can check us out on metazotics.com. We typically have all of our animals individually pictured for the most part right there on the website. I will be in Lexington, Kentucky this weekend at the Kentucky Reptile Expo. And then I think I'm off of reptile shows for at least a month and a half, something like that. Catch my breath.
Yeah.
You got it. And I know everybody is wondering, and I wish I could tell you more, but so far we can tell you the last weekend in September will be Colubrid Fest. And we are still hoping to be able to tell you the exact city as soon as possible. And whenever we can, I promise I will explain why we couldn't previously. So,
okay, cool. Well, this has been a fantastic episode, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on the show. I'm going to throw you backstage. I'm going to run the outro. If you want to hang out for a couple minutes, we'll talk afterwards.
You got it.
All right. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
See you.
All right, guys. What another great episode of the Colubrid Corruption Podcast. This was just a great, informative episode. Clint brings so much knowledge to the table when it comes to both the animals and just business as a whole. I really like that he's not afraid to talk about this, because it is something that like people don't want to talk about in the hobby, because, you know, they think it's ethically wrong to talk about animals and money, but when it comes down to it, it's a huge part of it. So give them props for that. For anyone who enjoyed, make sure you hit the like on today's video. Anyone who's watching the replay up to this point, thank you so much. Make sure you go give Clint a follow. Make sure you hit subscribe, hit like. Again, guys, all my social medias are down below. I do have Meteoric Serpents t-shirts available. Also have some animals on Morph Market. Go check it out. Go follow me on Instagram. But yeah, guys, this has been another fantastic episode once again of the Colubrid Corruption Podcast. Thank you for tuning in to episode number 22. Today we had on Clint Bartley of Metazotics. Thank you guys so much. Have a fantastic rest of your night. A happy Sunday, and we'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace out.